Okay. Should I go yellow or no, green? Green's better. Green and purple. That makes it kind of look like a crappy dive bar, right? Yeah. If I had time, I would go and build my own bar setup for this video. We have Barry back here portraying the bartender. Barry is a very skilled bartender, okay? Barry, give me a shot of I don't know. I was actually going to start this video off with me pretending to be drunk, but see, the thing is, fun fact about me, in case you don't know, I've never been drunk before in my life. Not even close. So, my best drunk interpretation is like, hey guys, how you doing? Tucker 1-1 here. We're gonna talk about this guy right here. This guy's got a nose, and he's like a larger nose than even Usopp, He's like the king of the noses. So that's the best interpretation I have for that. Although, I will say, if there's any video to talk about booze and drunk stories, if you guys got any good drunk stories out there, this is the time to tell them, I guess. So, keep them like PG, but, like, if you want to go ahead and tell me a cool drunk story. Like, dude, one time I got drunk and woke up the next day on top of the Empire State Building. I mean, like, so that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one right there. Okay. And by the way, I don't drink, and yet I have all of this. I keep alcohol in the house for friends, guests when they come over. Some of this stuff is wicked old, like this back here. This sake was the sake that I used for Zoro's character video I did back in, I think, of April of 2017. So this is like a 6-year-old bottle of sake. Let's see. Oh, here's the this bottle of Fireball I bought, I think, when I did the Whiskey Peak video, and I don't think I've ever opened it. So there it is. We got some other sake here. We got Captain Morgan, of course. I think I had that for the Captain Morgan video. That I actually have opened. Some of my friends have tried that before. And then we have this really fancy kind of, I don't know, Irish whiskey that I bought just because it has a skull with a top hat on it. So, yoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! There we go. All right, so I'm just letting you know right out of the gate, this fruit, we don't know a single thing about what it could do. like literally. All we know is that Vasco shot has the power of the Glug-Glug Fruit, that being the onomatopoeia for drinking. I don't think it's necessarily a onomatopoeia specifically for drinking alcohol. I think it's just the onomatopoeia that you use when you're really drinking anything. The equivalent in, English would be glug. You could glug down like milk or sody pop or, whatever you want, really. However, it is specifically an alcohol-based power because it was announced like Glug-Glug Fruit making Vasco shot a sake human or a liquor human, or I think in the Viz translation it was booze man. He's a booze man, all right? Which we already knew that because Vasco shot's epithet, like while he was imprisoned and impaled down, his pirate epithet, just like, Law is the surgeon of death. Zoro is the pirate hunter. Vasco shot is the heavy drinker Vasco, all right? So once again, this is Blackbeard's crew going out and finding the absolute perfect devil fruit for every person. In fact, out of every single member of the Blackbeard crew, I would actually say, because Doc Q might have already had the sick fruit before, like, they met him, because he had a relatively high bounty, and so, he's already very sickly when we see him at Jaya, and I think San Juan also had his fruit before. Yeah, he was imprisoned and impaled down. He already had the giant fruit, right? So, out of all of the fruits that they found, like the Riki no Mi for Burgess, and the Warp fruit for Augur, I mean, those are really fitting. The Pegasus fruit for Stronger, but I think out of all of them, the one that fits the best is literally the alcohol-based devil fruit for the heavy drinker Vasco shot. And in fact, now that I'm thinking about this, you guys know that scene in Thriller Bark when Sanji faces off against Absalom, and Sanji's all pissed off at Absalom, and he just rushes in and starts beating the crap out of him, and he's like really angry, and like the flames are igniting behind him, and it's kind of like the scene in Endgame a little bit where Sanji shows up and just like, you took everything away from me, and Absalom just gets up and he's like, I don't even know who you are, you know? And then Sanji explains, he's like, you will. He's like, no, he explains, like, I wanted to eat the clear, clear fruit. I wanted to have the power of invisibility, and you stole that dream away from me. Which, by the way, now that I'm actually thinking about that scene, it's kind of weird because, like, Sanji, like, the way forward is very clear here, buddy. You know, there can only be one devil fruit at a time, and Absalom has the fruits, so seems pretty clear what you need to do to Absalom to free up the clear, clear fruit, right? Well, anyway, that's going to be a scene very similar we're going to get coming up in the story, except it's going to be with Zoro and Vasco shot. I know everybody wants Zoro to fight Shiryu, whatever, that's boring. I want to see the Zoro versus Vasco shot scene. Same exact layout, too. Zoro shows up, he finds out what Vasco shot's ability is, and then Zoro, like, begins to slice him up with the sword, and Vasco's there drinking a giant barrel of sake, and he's like, actually, you know what, he might not even need a drink anymore. The side effect of his fruit, and we will get into it, might just be that he's drunk all the time, which, you know, for most people would be rather encumbering or a serious illness, but also it's the fact, you know, he's already drunk pretty much 24/7 anyway, so the fact that he's always drunk with the ability might just make him more dangerous, right? Well, anyway, you could have a scene where Zoro's trying to cut up Vasco, and Vasco's there, and he's teetering, and he's tottering, and he's just like, look, why are you even trying to fight me, man? Why do you hate me so much? Let's be friends. Come on. And Zoro is just like, you stole my dream away from me. What? What's that? It's like, you took away the one devil fruit that I was interested in. The alcohol-based fruit. Damn you. I shall now slice you up, you know? I want to see that scene. I think it could work perfectly fine. So, what do I mean by we don't really know what this fruit can do? Well, see, unlike the island fruit that Ivalo Pizarro was revealed to have, we got to see him use those powers. You know, he turned the skull of Hachinosu into, like, his own face, and he was kind of, like, talking through it and everything like that. San Juan Wolf's big fruit, or the giant fruit, that one's pretty self-explanatory. It just makes him bigger. But then we get to Vasco Shot, and it's revealed in the little title box what he has, but we don't really get to see him utilize the power. Now, in the chapter, we do see him floating on a bubble, and at first glance, you might assume, like, oh, he made, like, a bubble out of liquor, and he's floating on that, okay? But that's actually not the case, because then it pans out, and you see that the bubble that he's floating on is actually the bubble that was created by San Juan Wolf. San Juan Wolf's on the ground, and he's huge, and he's, like, taking a nap, and there's, like, snot bubbles coming out of his nose, like, poop, poop, and then they're floating up into the air because he's so big, and Vasco Shot's floating on that. So you could just say that because the snot bubbles, this is disgusting, I apologize, but the snot bubbles are so, like, big and, like, hardy because, like, San Juan is the one creating them, that Vasco, this has nothing to do with the alcohol fruit. This has nothing to do with his devil fruit. He's just floating on a bubble, all right? And, you know, so that's just it. Now, the other way of looking at this is because he does have the Glug-Glug Fruit and he's a booze man, maybe he has the ability... And it's ironic considering there is a person named Jesus on the Blackbeard crew. But maybe he has the ability to transform any liquid into alcohol. Okay, so water into wine, but not just wine. He could turn water into sake. He could turn soda into whiskey. He could do anything he wants to do. He can turn any type of liquid, any non-alcoholic beverage into an alcoholic beverage. He could turn, you know, non-alcoholic beer into beer. He can't be stopped, ladies and gentlemen, right? He could do that, totally, 100%. So that could be the situation. Like, he turned the snot bubble into booze, and then once he turns something into alcohol, he can manipulate it however he wants, okay? He can float on it, he can manipulate, he can move it around, and you know what? That's where I think we're going to get into the real strength of this devil fruit, okay? I have a lot of other ideas based around the fact that he can directly manipulate alcohol and spirits and all that kind of jazz, but let's just take that out of the equation for right now. Let's take the idea that he manipulates alcohol specifically, and let's break this down on what alcohol really is. Okay, I'm going to pour you guys a drink. What do you want? You know what? I have the Captain Morgan already open, so let's just start with that. And I'm just going to pour you guys a drink right here, and I want you to tell me what this is. Okay. What is this? What is this? somebody else was like, a really cheap-ass rum. Like, no, but what is this? Seriously. It's a liquid. Vasco Shot has the liquid fruit, or the water fruit. It's not water, but it's liquid. That's a big deal. That is a really big deal, okay? Because I made a video years ago about like the water fruit and how could it exist and all that stuff. There was Honey Queen's ability in the second movie that was non-canon. That was like she turned into like some kind of jelly substance. Nami defeated her by trapping her in a jar. Nami defeated a Logia user. I love that movie. But you know, in the story itself, having a devil fruit that manipulates liquids and water or any kind of something like that, I mean, that's a big deal. You know what I mean? That's not something we encounter all the time, okay? So the fact that Vasco has a power that he can manipulate liquid, I mean, you know, don't overlook that just in and of itself, okay? Just taking the idea that it's alcohol out of the equation. Let's say Vasco, he could just like, I don't know, create a flood of alcohol, like a flood that just washes through the town and just knocks everybody away. Regardless of the fact that that flood is made out of whiskey or whatever, it's still a flood that, like, just the damage of that alone, the shockwave, and also liquid is a weakness to devil fruit users. It does not matter, once again, I have to reiterate this, it doesn't matter if it is salt water or fresh water or soda or orange juice or brandy or whatever. It doesn't matter. If a devil fruit user is submerged in a type of liquid, they will be weakened by said liquid, okay? Oda did a whole SBS about this, and he mentions that the sea, though the devil fruit users are weak to the sea, the sea in this context is any type of standing liquid. That's what Oda said, okay? So if a devil fruit user, you know, if Luffy were to jump in a giant barrel of milk, that would weaken him. If he were to jump in if Zoro had a devil fruit and he jumped into a giant barrel of sake, that would weaken him, okay? That's how it works, okay? So just with that alone, I feel like Vasco Shot's devil fruit could be very dangerous. Now, going into the idea that he actually can manipulate alcohol, we get a few other things too. So, for example, the big one, and this was something that was hinted at in the chapter where it was revealed. It was the one thing that kind of gave us an indication of what he could do with his devil fruit, is that he suggested burning the port down. You know, because the Marines were attacking and everything, or Kobe was escaping, and so Vasco Shot's just like, how's about I just burn the whole city down? That'll flesh him out or whatever. You know what I mean? Flush him out? I don't know, man. You know. And so Avala Pizarro is like, no, don't burn the town down. Teach will be mad at us if you do that. So the implication is he could do that, and it seems pretty simple how he could do that, right? He could just douse the whole town in booze and then light a match, or he could just like spray alcohol out of his mouth and then light that on fire, you know, just like turn his mouth into a freaking flamethrower. He could do that. So fire-based abilities are probably his bread and butter, I would say. Now, with that being said, I don't think he could reach temperatures on the level of like a Kainu or Sabo or anything. How hot can alcohol burn? I imagine it would be the proof, right? If it could even burn at all. So I don't know that much about alcohol, honestly. I have a lot of friends that do. I should have had them on. This is 70 proof. So, you know, 70 proof. I don't know how hot that would burn or for how long that would burn. Okay, right? So, but you know, once again, this is anime logic here. So Vasco could probably just like, you know, and the temperature might be able to raise a little bit. I brought this up because Prince Groose has the clay fruit, being able to create these clay golems, and I was like, you know, the weakness to that devil fruit is probably fire and heat, because you can like fire clay to make it harden. So maybe if Vasco could reach a temperature hot enough, he could like douse the golems in booze and then light them on fire, and you know, with a little bit of anime logic thrown in there, the temperature would be hot enough instantaneously to like harden the golems and they can't move. It could be something like that. You could do that. Getting into the actual aspect of being drunk, okay? So Vasco is already drunk all the time. You know, he was drunk somehow even when he was in prison. He was still drunk. Like, literally, like, Southern Comfort just flows through his veins, okay? His heart just pumps out absolute vodka, all right? Like, that's just how he is, right? So he's already drunk. That's not going to encumber him. But a regular user of this fruit, like if a normal person were to just eat the Glug-Glug fruit, they just might become into a state of inebriation all the time. Like they're always drunk. So this might actually be a fruit that most people would not want. Most people, when they eat this fruit, would probably have like as a detriment because they would just be drunk all the time, right? And they wouldn't be able to do anything, But in the case with Vasco, this is the perfect fruit because he's always drinking. His tolerance is super high. It's through the roof. So he's always drunk, whatever. Now, on top of that, on that being a benefit to him, it might also increase his brutality. I mean, he was in level 6 for a reason here, guys. Okay, and I also may remind you something about Vasco Shot. When we saw him at Amazon Lily, right, there was the scene when Katarina Devon, Vasco Shot, and Blackbeard were arriving at Amazon Lily to capture Boa and bring her back and get the love fruit, okay, because Blackbeard wanted it. There was that line of dialogue that Vasco had that was just like, hey, maybe we shouldn't just kill Boa right away. Maybe we should have some fun with her first. Yeah, you can kind of get the impression on why he was in level 6 of Impel Down. If he's just like this drunken, just going around, and yeah. So with the idea is that here, it might make him way more brutal. It might make his pain goes way down, so he has a higher pain tolerance, so you can't really hurt him. Like, even if Zoro were to take out his Enma and, like, slice a giant, gash right into Vasco's arm, and he's, like, bleeding everywhere, Vasco might not even feel it. He might be like, that was very nice, and his, blood turns into booze, and he just starts drinking that, and just like, that's not very nice, you know what I mean? So it could be something like that. Also, there are drunken-based martial arts, like Drunken Fist. Anybody ever watch Naruto? Lee's Drunken Fist. It could be something like that with Vasco, too. He gets wicked toasted, and then he could just, beat the crap out of you with his drunken martial arts style. There's a lot of angles you can take it with this. And on top of that, he might also be able to make other people drunk. He might just be able, maybe if just a splash of alcohol gets on them, maybe he can make them inebriated so they're confused and they're like, what, I'm dizzy, I can't fight. You know what I mean? He might just be able to make you drunk. Now, this is another reason why I kind of want to see, Shiryu has to fight Zoro, that has to happen, but maybe we could have a few other encounters, it doesn't have to be okay, Zoro has to fight Shiryu and nobody else. We might have a moment where Zoro clashes with other Blackbeard Pirate members, and that's the case in the 10 Titanic Captains. I would like Zoro to clash with Vasco, maybe even briefly, and so Vasco's ability is to make other people drunk, and so he makes Zoro drunk, but Zoro just gets stronger too. Zoro's just like, oh, okay, thanks for, okay. And then the fight is kind of even there because Zoro also has a crazy high tolerance. So, yeah, I think those abilities, for most people in the One Piece world, it would be very devastating to fight with those set of abilities where he can light you on fire and he doesn't feel pain and he has higher endurance and he has this martial arts that he uses when he's drunk and he can make you drunk to make you confused and dizzy and you can't really, your vision's getting blurry and shit and you black out or whatever. If not Zoro, I was trying to think of another member of the Straw Hats that could handle their liquor pretty well. And I don't think Oda's ever, because sometimes in the SBS, Oda will be there'll be questions like which Straw Hat chews ice cubes, which Straw Hat would be the best at giving a haircut, you know what I mean? I don't think there's ever been a SBS poll on which Straw Hats would handle their liquor the best, but I would assume Zoro would win. Zoro would be the one that can handle his booze definitely pretty good. Actually, it might be Nami. Nami might be actually number one because there was the scene at Whiskey Peak when they were all getting drunk and Zoro was out before Nami was. And Nami was aware that it was she was aware it was a scam and she still got drunk and she was still able to come back from that. I feel like it's if money is involved or if she knows she's about to be scammed, Nami has this just godly ability to sober up immediately. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal for her, right? So Nami might actually be the Straw Hat that can handle their liquor the best, followed closely by Zoro. And then you would have all the other Straw Hats in there too. But I think Chopper would be the worst. I think we can all agree that Chopper would handle his liquor the worst, okay? But somebody else that can handle it pretty well. If we're going to go maybe Zoro and Nami in the number 1 and number 2 spot, number 3 would probably be Jinbei. because Jinbei, he's a hardy man, he drinks sake, he has like that stuff, kind of like more of like a Yakuza sort of style, but he drinks, he drinks alcohol, he partakes. So honestly, if you're going to have somebody fight against Vasco, I guess Nami, I feel like, has to fight. Nami and Robin might have to have an interaction with Katarina Devon, because Katarina Devon's whole thing is that she is like a headhunter that like decapitates every woman that is more beautiful than her. Okay, so obviously I think Nami and Robin, there has to be an interaction there. But that's what I mean. Like, I don't think Oda has to do a thing where like, Zoro fights Shiryu, and that's the only thing that happens. Nami and Robin fight against Katarina because, of her whole thing, I feel like Oda could have more than one interaction with the Blackbeard crew and the Straw Hats. Like they fight briefly on like one occasion, and then like, oh, they have to retreat or something, and then they'll come back later. Something like that. In fact, right now at Egghead, we have that ship, the Blackbeard ship, arriving at Egghead. Every other member of the Blackbeard crew is accounted for except for 2 members, Lafitte and Katarina Devon. So if Katarina Devon is going to be at Egghead right now, we could have the interaction between Nami and Robin and Katarina right now, and then see how that goes, and then later on they could maybe fight somebody else. Because it really is set up and established, like each of the Straw Hats are going to have like a one-on-one battle with the 10 Titanic captains, because there's 10 members of the Straw Hats right now, 10 members of the 10 Titanic captains, obviously. I don't know if Aokiji is going to stick around on the Blackbeard crew, but from what we saw in the last chapter, it seems like he is. So if that's the situation, then who's going to fight Aokiji? Who would be, I guess, Brook? Brook has ice powers. I don't know if ice and ice, I guess that would work. Actually, you know what? Brook would probably work the best now that I'm thinking about it. He has ice powers, but his ice powers are different. Also, he's all bones. Yo! So, try to freeze the flesh and all that stuff off of Brook. It's not going to work. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we might have a thing where, like, Luffy fights Blackbeard, Zoro fights Shiryu, Nami fights Katarina, Usopp fights Van Augur, obviously, Chopper fights Doc Q, Jinbei fights Vasco, Frankie fights San Juan Wolf, who would fight Avala Pizarro, maybe Robin could fight Avala Pizarro, Sanji could fight... maybe Lafitte, Sanji and Lafitte maybe, and then finally you could have like the final battle, Aokiji and Brook. Like that could actually work, I think, right? So yeah, now would Brook be able to beat him? I mean, I don't know. Like, Brook unlocks like the true secrets, because you can understand like the freezing chill of the underworld would have a little bit more of a bite than the regular cold that like Aokiji can mess with. This is like literally this is established that the underworld exists in One Piece, and Brook is channeling the powers of that place in the mortal realm. So I feel like that would be a little bit more like if you ever read, and I know we're getting off topic now because we're pretty much at the end of the video, but like if you've ever read like the legend of like the Buddhist hell, like the Naraka realm in Buddhist hell, it's ridiculously cold. It's redonkulously cold, like colder than anything else, and so maybe it's something that could be adapted to Brook's ability. But anyway, going along with that, yeah, I think that's also alcohol doesn't freeze as easily as water, right? I mean, can you freeze alcohol? I imagine you could if it gets cold enough. Like if you get like really cold, like negative 100 degrees, I'm pretty sure alcohol might begin to freeze. I guess it depends on how much alcohol is in it, but eventually it would freeze. I know you can freeze gasoline. It just has to be really cold to freeze gasoline, right? So that might be a natural protection, actually. Like if Brook were to fight Vasco, or if Aokiji ever turned on the crew and attacked Vasco, Vasco wouldn't, he would have a resistance to that maybe, or his ability, like he summons liquor bubbles and attacks you with them or whatever. He sends a flow of liquor at you. Aokiji tries to freeze it, but he's unable to. He has to really dial down the temperature to make that work. So there's that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all the stuff I covered. Like I said, if I knew a little bit more about booze, alcohol, and spirit... Oh, that's another angle. Oh my god, this is a stupid idea, but I like it, okay? It's not actually stupid. I think it actually falls in line a lot with, like, Oda's sense of humor and stuff. Okay, what is another name for alcohol and liquor? Spirits, right? It's One Piece. What if he summons liquor spirits? What if he summons booze spirits? What if he's just like, hey, oh, sick here, everybody. hold on a moment. Throws liquor out there, and the liquor kind of coalesces into like, ooh, like ghosts or whatever, and attacks the. That would be cool. That would be a cool move. I feel like that's been done before in anime. I feel like somebody kind of has that ability. Someone's made that joke before, but I think it would fit. I think it would fit along with like Oda's sense of like humor and things, right? So yeah, we could do that. You know, he could spew fire. He can make people drunk. He himself is drunk. Pain, lowered martial arts, and he manipulates liquid, which I think is overall the most dangerous thing there. If he can literally turn things into alcohol, if he can like literally turn like, you know, he touches you and turns your blood into booze, that might be how he makes you drunk, you know, or whatever. I don't know, but we'll wait to see. But out of all of them, his ability is probably the most catered to himself. Probably only rivaled by like Doc Q's sick fruit in terms of like fitting perfectly, right? All right, well, with that being said, we can now move on to some turtle facts. I think this is going to be the last one, last episode of Turtle Facts, and then we're going to move on to the letter U, which I have no idea. Unicorn facts! I mean, it honestly might. It honestly might be unicorn facts. I can't think of another animal that starts with the letter U, and I was looking it up, and it's like, I think there's animals that start with a U to define something else, like a species of bird that has the letter U at the front of it. But we kind of already did quail facts, so like I got to think about this. If we got to do unicorn facts, I will do unicorn facts. Anyway, go to the turtle fact intro. Yeah, here we go. Time for some turtle facts. Time for some, turtle facts. We're going to talk about turtle facts. All right, so today on the last episode of Turtle Facts, we're talking about, you know what, I wanted to talk about because turtles are regarded in tortoises to be slow. You know, the idea of the tortoise and the hare, you know, the hare is really fast and the turtle's really slow, but slow and steady wins the race and everything. So I wanted to do a video about the fastest turtle in the world, okay? And I give you, for your consideration, the leatherback sea turtle. Leatherback sea turtle, pretty damn big. In fact, it is the heaviest and largest, the largest turtle species, period. And in terms of weight, it is the heaviest non-crocodile species of reptile. So any crocodile, they can get bigger, but the leatherback sea turtle, man, can grow up to 100, maybe I am drunk, 1,100 pounds of girth, okay? So that's a pretty heavy turtle. Here it is to scale to size with a human. Also, for this reason, they lay pretty big eggs. I believe they're the largest eggs out of every turtle in the animal kingdom. They can live up to, on standard, 30 to 50 years, but being over 100 years old has happened. It's just very rare for these turtles to get that old. They pretty much, like, the open ocean is sort of their entire territory. So there's leatherback sea turtles that live in the Pacific, live in the Atlantic, live in the Indian Ocean. I mean, they're all over the world, and they migrate and stuff. They go up on sea, lay their eggs, and then here are some hatchlings that are trying to make it to the ocean. But even the hatchlings are pretty big because, you know, like the actual turtles are huge, right? Now, in terms of speed, ordinarily, probably they could swim around 5 miles per hour, which, you know, considering you think of turtles and tortoises as like very slow moving, 5 miles an hour or about 10 kilometers an hour, I mean, that's a pretty decent speed. However, the Guinness Book of World Records has the fastest moving leatherback sea turtle clocked at 21 miles per hour or 35 kilometers an hour. All right, that's nothing to in the animal kingdom, all right? There are plenty of animals that cannot even reach close to 35 kilometers an hour, all right? So the fact that, like, turtles are always considered to be slow and whatever, that's in this case not true. It would make sense that the sea turtles can actually swim faster than land terrestrial. I think that adage, the hare and the tortoise, is more about, like, a terrestrial tortoise not being able to move very fast. But anyway, they are vulnerable right now. These are a lot of, like I said, with a lot of sea turtles, dealing with pollution and debris in the water, like trash. So this is the esophagus of a sea turtle. Very scary, true. It's like lined with all these spikes and stuff to like shred whatever fish or jellyfish they eat. However, here is a plastic bag just floating in the ocean, looks remarkably like a jellyfish. So this leatherback sea turtle is going to see that, and they prey on jellyfish, so they're going to be like, ooh, yummy. So they go over and devour this plastic bag, and it just gets completely, you know, gunked up inside of their esophagus, and they can end up choking, and they can end up dying from these things. So just got to clean up the ocean, guys. Got to clean up the ocean. I wish I could just lift up all of the trash in the ocean, congeal it into a giant ball, and then chuck it into the sun. All right, maybe not our sun. Maybe like Alpha Centauri or like Canis XY Major or whatever the biggest star. Another star. Let another galaxy deal with our trash. The Pistol Star. Congeal all the trash in the ocean and then chuck it into the Pistol Star. That's an initiative for you. I feel like this is the alcohol fruit video. I feel like I should drink at least a sip of this, right? You know what I mean? I've had Captain Morgan before. I've never been drunk, but I've had alcohol before. All right, anyway, you got your drink. It doesn't have to be alcoholic. You could drink whatever. You know, it could be iced tea or whatever. It could be whatever. All right, you know, ready? All right, cheers. There you go. Ah. Ah, all right. You guys have a good one. Teching signing out.